Welcome everyone in the afternoon session. I'd like to introduce Florent Gravin and Jeroen Ticheler is easier for me as a Dutch name. From Geo Network, they will do a state of Geo Network presentation.
It's not on the presentation mode.
It looks kind of funny, no? But
No,
it's not what
no.
we intended. It should just be full screen. Is it possible?
Technical issues.
F12 or 11 to make it full screen? No.
Okay.
I would say it's good enough, and please start because we already lost some minutes for technical reasons. Thank you.
Okay, so let's start. Hello, so we are happy to be on the big stage to present Geo Network, state of the art. So what's new for the last year in the community, and what is the vision and the statement of the project? So how can I switch to the next page? Okay, maybe here. I don't have page down, I just have a mouse. Okay. So, me, I'm Florent Gravin. I work at Camp to Camp, and I'm a PSC chair at Geo Network, and I give the hand to Geo Network's father.
I'm Jeroen Ticheler, director of GeoCat and founder of Geo Network Project. And we go on from here.
So, I will click. C'est with the wheel.
I don't know. So we'll talk about the metadata catalog GeoNetwork, which is becoming more and more full data management tool with lots of capabilities. But for those who don't know, we have a very short introduction. What is GeoNetwork? It's a comprehensive metadata editing and management tool, catalog application. And you can say it's the glue in a spatial data infrastructure. It consists of several building blocks, and you can look at this from all kind of angles, but the most important are ISO TC211 geospatial standards, OGC standards, and we're introducing more and more open data standards as well. The history, very brief. It was started by myself in 2000 when I was working at the United Nations. And we have a code and issues maintained on GitHub. There's around 1,000 downloads per month. This is probably nothing in comparison to some desktop GIS software, but for a catalog software, it's considerable. We have a very active global developer community. It's a relatively small community, but a very large user community that actually implement the catalog. And I think a very important indication of the quality of the software is that it's used by over 80% of the European national Inspire catalogs. And currently it's also used as the backend of the Inspire European catalog. Just a screenshot of the Dutch National Geo Registry running on GeoNetwork, where all the geospatial data of the Netherlands comes together, and also is fed into the European Inspire portal. As I said, it has a very powerful metadata editor with lots of options, validation options, metadata profile options, templating options, and options to add data and deploy data. Has a very extensive administrative interface where you can actually see most of the things through a web interface. There's obviously also things that you can see through command line or other ways, but through the user interface, there's a lot of things that you can do immediately. There's been an OSGeo project since 2007. There was, off the top of my head, I'm actually not quite sure, it could be a year earlier or later, but it was very early in the OSGeo process. There's a project steering committee. We have 7 members, listed on the right side. We have a monthly meeting to discuss things that are going on, to discuss if we have presentations, if we have issues with code, with releases, and so on. So where are we now? We maintain long-term supported version on GitHub, version 3.12.10 currently. It's mainly sustained through our GeoCut Enterprise product, but we make sure that all the changes that happen for that enterprise product feed back into the 3.x release. And currently we are stabilizing on 4.2 for the latest version that includes Elasticsearch as a backend system for indexing and so on. Now things changed, right? Oops. Oh, I'm touching something. Okay. Here it's you, huh? Yeah.
Yes, so what made GeoNetwork really famous is abilities to implement the standards. So both OGC standards, so in metadata world is CSW and OGC API records, and ISO standards for really requirements about the metadata. What is important, would like to focus is the fact that there is all the OGC API stuff, features, records, and so on, and GeoNetwork is already able, already implements the OGC records features. So there is a microservices for that, which called OGC API records. So we are compliant. And during the last sprints, we are more invested into the OGC community. So we went to different code sprints to improve the implementation of the standards. And last one in Buchini, we were with the OGC API records teams, and we were just discussing together because actually it's almost the first times that those community meet, and it was great to exchange about their use cases, like trying to be compatible with the stacks things, the fact that the API records comes along with the OGC API features, and we discussed different implementation things and different standard things. And the GeoNetwork community brought a new proposal for the facets that has to be discussed this week. So we are compliant to this, yes, to this specification for the part 1 core draft, which should be released in the summer. And we have different outputs from this API, HTML, ISO, but also DCAT, RSS for the whole platform, turtle and schema.org. And we have done a focus on exporting the whole catalog as DCAT, while before it was just one metadata. So we are compliant with government data portals or open data portals. And for sure, we support the directive, Inspire directive, which I don't know if it's still a trend or fashion to be Inspire compliant.
Yeah, for Inspire, one of the things that I indicated is that we have been working on a project with JRC, a European Union, to make GeoNetwork, the back end of the Inspire Geo portal. And for this, we have developed a number of standard components that can be installed together with GeoNetwork. And that system has been in operation since last December. The last reporting period has made use of those capacities of those new components of GeoNetwork. This very brief architecture of that. It's the GeoNetwork core application, and then there's a couple of separate service applications that retrieve metadata from the national endpoints, do a link checking process, ingest the results into the catalog, and make it available to member countries and to, in the end, the general users. So there's a harvesting console, which is probably the most visible for the member countries, where they configure their endpoint and have a new CSW harvester process that is able to use large capacities of metadata. The results can then be seen, and the log of each different harvest process is visible. And that can be used to investigate where problems are in services metadata that is provided by a member country. So it includes statistics about those metadata, about the date of the harvesting, the number of metadata records, number of different type of data or services that are retrieved, what can be downloaded, is it actually downloadable, is it viewable, and so on. And then you can basically dive into those details, which one failed, which one are successful, and that is used by countries to actually point to services that are not compliant or not functional. Other developments that happened over the last year in GeoNetwork 4, there's a lot of improvements to make web accessibility better in the UI. There's a lot of security and upgrade of libraries that happened. Open API support for documentation, and AngularJS update, Bootstrap upgrade. And currently there's a development for Java 11, and I think there's even a process starting to support Java 17. But those still need to be merged and need to be reviewed. Some of the latest features, there's the support for OAuth and OIDC bearer tokens. This has been tested with Azure Active Directory and with Keycloak with an Azure Active Directory in the back, and a lot of stability improvement on the main branch.
Yes, okay, thank you, Jeroen. So, as Jeroen demonstrated with the GRC thing and everything, GeoNetwork is quite a powerful engine to process metadata. But we know that there are some limitations and maybe some a move to do to embrace the new use cases, to embrace the open data world, etc. So I will talk a bit about the vision that we are setting up with the community and with our customers and with our companies to see what GeoNetwork should look like in the future and how we are trying to turn it out. So first, what will be important is the user experience. Many people have some feedbacks about the usability of GeoNetwork, and this is something we really want to address. We are competing actually with open data world. So when open data came out with modern catalogs and softwares, it was kind of a competition for GeoNetwork. And I think that the user interface nowadays is kind of declining a bit. So we want to put the user in the middle of all the system. We want to address more modern use cases that again come from the open data world, like how to reuse the data, how to visualize the data. So put the data to be more data centric than metadata centric. Yes, and with all that will and that things that come around with all the data ecosystem and the data trend, I think we are moving slowly to be kind of a data platform. So yes, one thing that is really important is when the open data came out with different European legislation, government legislation, where there is like a scope for using open data, promoting open data in every country. And like all the organizations, the municipalities, the states, many organizations, they started to have their own open data catalog. And it was kind of something a bit not weird, but unpleasant, like to have two catalogs and to differentiate what is an open data to what is a geodata, because a geodata can be free and published, and an open data can be geo. So usually people, they started to have different catalogs and try to synchronize all those catalogs. But it appears to be painful to maintain in the long run. So the goal now is to be able to unify all of your data sets within GeoNetwork, because GeoNetwork is a powerful engine, and it could be even seen as an headless metadata catalog to just process, harvest, validate, and whatever manage the ISO complexity, etc. So this is the move we want to help with, and we found some customers who found it the start of this move to be able to unify both open data and metadata world. For the user interface and the user experience thing, we already introduced the GeoNetwork UI framework or project or library, which is within the GeoNetwork organization, and it's a project beside GeoNetwork, which is designed to really help the user using GeoNetwork and to ease data maintainers, data providers to deal with metadata. We all know that metadata can be painful, and we want to integrate it very seamlessly in the workflow of just treating and dealing with data. So what is GeoNetwork UI? In few words, it's a project that just help to move from old-fashioned SDI, like based maybe on GeoServer administration, which is kind of expert mode, GeoNetwork editing, which is kind of expert as well, and we try to add facades in front of that to hide the complexity of all this system. So in terms of technology, it's kind of a framework which helps you to quickly create components, application, to export them as web components, to integrate them in third-party websites. So it's all of JavaScript things to really provide new interfaces. So it's how we see the ecosystem of GeoNetwork right now. So we used to have a huge monolith, which is the core, and we try to enlighten the core and move some of the features to microservices when it's backend services. For instance, the OGC API records or indexing. We try to have a constellation of services, and we have the user experience managed by GeoNetwork UI. So we really tend to have GeoNetwork as a headless metadata catalog. We talk of GeoNetwork UI, and the Data Hub is the first product which is visible from it. It's just a new user interface, a facet to the search. And this year there was a lot of development around it, an activity feed, key features, search filters. So many things that have been influenced by Open Data Catalog. We are working on the data viz, on the configurability, the ability to have themes, to have a dashboard, to have a better vision. So we are slowly and incrementally adding new features. So this is what it looks like. So it's GeoNetwork It's GeoNetwork API, it's GeoNetwork UI things, and it's just different from what we used to have. We have data viz, it's data-centric, we can see the data on the map. It's more friendly for the users. And there is already a lot of data hub which have been deployed, so all of this. And what is great, if you have GeoNetwork 4, you just need to deploy the data hub, which is a static web application, and you benefit from all this development with your GeoNetwork backend. The next step is the editor. So we raise some money with the crowdfunding, so thanks to the community for trying to work on a new editor with new concept. And the idea here is as well that it's very painful to edit ISO, very complex metadata. And many users of GeoNetwork or a data platform that just want to fill 10 fields to be able to search for the data and not to fill the whole ISO fields just to have it complete. So there is a presentation about that on Friday. And let's finish with the great community we have.
So what we have this year is another round of Code Sprint in Bolsena, which is an event that we've been organizing since 2007. We have space for 26 developers participating not only on GeoNetwork, but GeoNetwork is one of the cornerstones, I would say, in the Code Sprint in general. But there's others that participate for other open source OSGeo projects. We cook, we have a lot of fun together. We do things like prototyping and meet to discuss what's next on our agenda. This year, because of FOSS4G happening at this period of the year, we've moved it to the end of August for 2 weeks. There's still space for developers or people that want to contribute to the project or other projects to participate. Very nice event. And then we're planning a user meeting for GeoNetwork, international user meeting, hosted at Swistopel on October 3rd in Switzerland. So this is more to have meetings with users on what they would like to see happening with the software and with the direction we go. More on GeoNetwork this week. Today at 3, there's an orientation and demo session happening at 3 o'clock. We look at what GeoNetwork is and what it's useful for. We peek under the hood and look at a few examples of how it's been used by organizations. On Friday, as Florent mentioned, there's another one, Rethink Geo Open Metadata Edition in GeoNetwork, so more about the metadata editing component. And earlier today, there was another session by Florent, which you can probably find once online recording is available. Thank you.
And yes,
Thank
just one word. The user meeting will be hosted by Swistopo and GeoCat, and GeoCat is also giving a presentation about his catalog on Friday at noon or 11:30, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We started a bit later. It's already time for the next presentation, but I think we can do a quick question if there is any. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Hello, thanks a lot for the talk. I work at the JRC, so we are the team that is actually building the new backend of the Inspire Geo portal. And thanks a lot to GeoCat for the work that is still ongoing. But as Jérôme said, we have now a working backend for our Geo portal that I am sure represented an interesting use case for the project itself, because just because of the numbers of metadata that we have to harvest, we have some impressive numbers in some EU member states catalog. So I hope that also this helped the project evolve. And last comment, exactly today we open another call for tender. This is publicly available in the e-tendering portal of the European Union. So given that I guess all the companies active in the geo network market are here, this is also an announcement. It's publicly available. You can just go and express your interest. This is still for the maintenance and future evolution of the Inspire Geo portal, with the idea to move to a portal supporting the Green Deal data space. Thanks.
Thank you. It was not really a question, I guess, so no answers needed, or do you want to reply to them?
It was great working with the JRC team to develop this. So yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much again. Everyone can find you in the GeoCat and Come to Camp booths, and so if there are any more questions, you can go there.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we quickly move on to, oh wow, super timing. Thank you very much. Jody Garnett or Garnet? Garnett, right? Garnet, what do you see?
You could just call me Jody, it's fine.
Jody and Andrea. With the state of GeoServer
That's correct,
presentation.
yeah.
Please start.
Okay. I'm not sure how we control the slides from here. Maybe with this mouse? I don't even see a mouse.
The mouse pointer is not moving.
No. Might help if I turn it on. Ooh, we could do this one. PG routing, are you lost? You're in the wrong presentation. Go home, PG routing, go home. No, Vicky's really nice. You could stay, Vicky, but send your project home. This could be a good game, Andrea. We could just do random talks for other projects. I'd be up for that. All right. Now, do I get to click? I don't get to.
Scroll? Maybe try scrolling. No.
You can do whatever you want. So, welcome to the outdoor stage. This really feels like it should be a sporting event. I'm like, goal! No, okay. Is there any control of the slides?
It's not working.
Well, I can just talk. GeoServer is happy to see you. So we've had a relatively interesting year in GeoServer. This is our State of GeoServer presentation, where we talk about what we've been up to basically since the last FOSS4G. We're going to cover a number of releases of GeoServer. So our current stable release of GeoServer is GeoServer 2.23. You can kind of tell we've been on version 2 of GeoServer for a long time. I don't think we have plans for GeoServer 3, do we?
We try very hard and not to go there.
Fair enough, fair enough. My name's Jody Garnett. I'd like to thank my employer, GeoCat, for giving me an opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Jaime. I work for GeoSolutions, and I would also like to thank my company for sending me here. And, well, hopefully we are going to start real soon.
Do we even need slides?
A little bit of pictures would be nice.
So GeoServer is a web service application. It's responsible for taking your data from wherever you have it and letting you share it with others. So it's most well known as a web map server, so responsible for mapping and visualization. By some metrics, it's the most popular web map server in the world, so responsible for the most number of layers being published as a WMS. It also It also speaks a number of other protocols. You can use it to share your vector data and your raster data. And then it can be extended with optional extensions for like web processing service, and we've got some community modules for OGC API and other stuff. If you go to the top right corner, there's a presentation mode. Yeah. Oh, this is. Okay, fair enough. I've just done this slide, so we're good. So our team updates. In addition to Andrea and myself, there's a core GeoServer team consisting of the project steering committee, responsible for the care and feeding of the project. And then we actually have core committers who do the bulk of the work. We got 23 kind of active committers lately that bring this project to you. We also have some core service providers. So these are often the employers of the people that do the work. And we try to acknowledge the organizations that bring GeoServer to you. So the core contributors actually, help make the releases and everything. The experienced providers have a history of working with GeoServer and then contributing back to the project. And in addition to those people, there's other service providers that will help you with GeoServer, but don't necessarily have a strong tradition of like adding to the sustainability of the project. In terms of GeoServer infrastructure, we have some. We've largely moved to OSGeo hosting and infrastructure. So in terms of community modules, our formal extensions that we release alongside GeoServer are kind of well established and have documentation and quality assurance, and we trust them. We also have a playground called community modules where we experiment with new ideas that people are considering, and when those graduate, they become an extension. And once they become kind of out of date or not interesting, like things like ArcSD and so on, they get downgraded and eventually reach an end of life. So on to GeoServer releases. So we always maintain 2 releases at any given point. So we've got our stable release, which is currently GeoServer 2.23, and that provides like new features and updates and bug fixes. And then we've got a maintenance stream that only provides like security updates and fixes, and that gives you a chance to upgrade. So if you're using an older version, please upgrade. That's how we can be sure to equip you with the latest, security fixes and features and so on. Yeah. So please upgrade. As we go through this talk, if you look along the bottom of the screen, you can see which version the feature was available in, the author responsible, and in many cases, the customer or the organization that was paying for the work. I'll do distribution and then hand this over. So a new feature done by me out of the kindness of my heart is making a Docker image available of nightly builds. And I did this as part of the OGC API sprint so that normal people can download our OGC API work and try it out and give us feedback. Over to you.
So, news about mapping. So, right, we improved a lot the mosaicing performance when you have a lot of tiny files that are being mosaiced together. The old rule of thumb was try not to mosaic more than 100 files in the same output image. Now we can do much better, much faster, even with many small images. We also improved the support for hyperspectral images. An image is hyperspectral when you have 100 bands or more, 200, 500, 1000 with these new sensors. GeoServer had some trouble dealing with it, but now we improved the performance by several order of magnitude. Currently working on this. It's not complete. It's going to land in the next few weeks. Raster attribute table support. It's this idea that you have a raster with numbers inside, but you want to attach attributes to those numbers and then use them in get feature info to do classifications, to do custom palettes and so on. And we are going to mimic, if you are familiar with it, the QGIS raster attribute table plugin behavior. Data sources and formats. Right. In a previous version of GeoServer, we added the ability to customize type names and attribute names and so on. In this version, we also added the ability to customize the description that eventually goes into the schema definition of a feature type in WFS. We are working hard on the cloud-optimized GeoTIFF community module, which is efficiently reading data from blob storage if it's in COG format. We added support for HTTP, S3, Azure, and Google Storage. We hope to add more formats, more authentication types support, because every cloud has its own little strange authentication mechanism, and other improvements and fixes. The last one to land was the COG support for Azure. We have been working on the Stack Data Store and Stack Mosaic. Stack Data Store can link to a Stack API and expose it as WFS, WMS as you like, but it can also be used as an index for a Mosaic so that you can fetch data from, links from Stack and then Mosaic the images into a map request.
I'm going to stop that.
Vector Mosaic in Store, it's a new entry. It's this idea that you might also want to mosaic vectors over time, over space, because paying for the storage of a database on cloud is very expensive, and you might want to store the vectors as little files in S3 instead. And in the database, you only have an index pointing to them. And based on the request, the time you chose and whatnot, it's going to pick the right files, read them, and render the output. We have a large number of WMS, WFS, and WMTS cascading improvements that have all come from the same person. Roar Bradnan, I hope that I pronounced the name correctly, is working on the GeoTools library, actually, but that library then powers all the cascading modules, so we would like to thank this person for all the improvements. Services. Okay, the CSW module ISO graduated. It's a module that allows you to generate ISO records out of the CSW plugin of GeoServer. You have a template that you can fill in to customize your output. In terms of customization, we have this new metadata module where you can type a little YAML file which will generate an editor in the user interface. You can edit whatever extra attribute you want, and then you can use these attributes in your ISO templates for CSW. So this makes GeoServer much more powerful in terms of the information that it can share through CSW. We are doing a lot of work on the GC API community modules. I just did a presentation about it. The Features API is actually site compliant, so it passes the conformance tests. The others are in various states of development. Please come talk to me if you're interested in it and would like to contribute some.
Thanks, Andrea. And we really would like and appreciate your support for funding the GeoServer roadmap. I'm really interested in OGC API, and I'd like to see someone send money to Andrea or myself, or let's get this done. Some work I did for my employer, GeoCat, was actually adjusting the GeoServer home welcome page. It has been the first visual change for a decade. So I've had lots of people come up to me this week and say, what happened, what's going on here? What's interesting is we can now actually see the title and the description that you've set up for your different services. And what's really neat is you can swap between the different workspaces and see the web services that are specific for one project team. And that feature has been in GeoServer for ages, and nobody noticed until we had a UI. So I enjoy making these things, and then Andrea enjoys making them not terrible. So Andrea added the ability to stop the welcome page taking minutes and minutes to load when people have 50,000 layers. Thanks, Andrea. Another just real minor change is you can now see what format your different styles are in, SLD, etc. We also have a fun just tweak to our REST API. So for the longest time, you've been able to reset and reload your GeoServer configuration, which is great. But if maybe your Postgres database went down and now it's working again, rather than reload your entire GeoServer, you can ask just that data store to load, or even just that layer to load if you've added a new column or something. Another interesting change is we've got this idea of a proxy base. So if your GeoServer is hiding behind, I don't know, some kind of load balancer or something, this community module lets you make slightly more interesting URLs and keep up. Space, the next frontier. This is yours.
Yes. So that's another thing that I'm working right now in the right. So we are getting GeoServer off the EPSG assumption. During the past 20 years, GeoServer always assumed that the EPSG is the one and only possible authority, and this assumption is pretty much everywhere in the code. We take away prefixes, keep numbers, reattach prefixes just like it was nothing, and this basically prevents using other authority. OSGeo is funding us to implement support for the EIU authority, which contains coordinate reference systems for planetary bodies in the solar system. So for every planet, you have like a dozen new coordinate reference systems. This is an example of the WMS. You can see that the SRS is EIU 49900, and then we reprojected to a Polar on the fly, which has a different code. And the work is ongoing. It can be tested already in the nightly build, but it's far from complete. In the next few weeks, I'll extend the capabilities generators to support multiple authorities, make sure that the protocols are working properly, make sure that the CRS is retained in any GIS-oriented output format like GML, GeoTIFF, and whatnot. And we also wanted to support PostGIS and GeoPackage.
So I want to talk to you for a moment about security vulnerabilities. The first thing I want to say is they suck. Mean people on the internet are terrible. In case you do stumble onto a security vulnerability in GeoServer, we do have a responsible disclosure policy, so there's many ways for you to reach us. What we don't want you to do is complain on Twitter or put an exploit into our bug tracker and saying, oh, this is terrible, I deleted my kitten or something. So please contact us at geoserversecuritylists.osgeo.org, or there's a GitHub vulnerability something or other. So next slide. We have had a number of formal CVE numbers, so we've just started using these as a project, and we'd like your feedback. So we started using these at the requests of some folks, but we've now noticed a number of people panicking when new CVEs appear out there on the wild. So yeah, let us know how this is working for you. We had recently an OGC filter, SQL injection attack, and so we've dealt with this in the appropriate way with a CVE number and issued a whole bunch of patches. So please update your GeoServer if you haven't done so already. And then here's one that Andrea has been working on, and I've been testing, that I'm really quite excited for. Now, I tried to announce this as a security vulnerability, but I didn't want to worry people. This is actually a really good, solid improvement. So some of the OGC standards were vulnerable by design. So things like web processing service let you pick up data from one server and process it and give back an answer. That was a really good idea from the innocent days of the web. But today, that can be used to do something called server-side request forgery. So we now have a control that you can configure in GeoServer, a new security page, which lets you put some constraints on what server GeoServer is allowed to talk to. So thanks. Over to you, Andrea.
Right. Another thing that has been concerning people is the H2 embedded database that we include in GeoServer. It's version 1. It's not supported anymore, and there are a couple of CVEs open towards it. We don't know of a way to leverage them through GeoServer, but they still show up in dependency analyzers. So we did some work to remove H2 at least from the core of GeoServer and switch the databases that are needed to HSQLDB. Eventually, some other plugins still need H2, like the NetCDF plugin, but we are going to work on them and get them off H2 as well, pending funding.
Oh, I'm going to skip that one. This was an annoying duplicate CV that showed up in our email last month. It's one we fixed last year, but people have been complaining about it recently. So on to community building. Participation is required to keep any open source project, including GeoServer, sustainable. So we would really like to thank some folks that stepped up this year. So Gabriel Rowland from Camp to Camp and Peter Smith, and I don't know his employer, I'm terrible, they stepped up and did some GeoServer releases this year, and we'd like to thank them for that. We do increasingly rely on a small development team, so big thanks to our core contributors who employ these folks. We have experimented with a number of different ideas for how GeoServer can accept money and get stuff done. We tried just doing sponsorship, and the amount of overhead involved wasn't very rewarding. We're going to experiment with a cost recovery model for some upcoming work that's starting this weekend at the Code Sprint. So, as for a GeoServer roadmap, what would you like to see happen next? We don't really have a roadmap in mind, but we do help encourage and orchestrate any work that people are doing. So, yeah. Yep. Okay. Thanks, everyone. How are we for time? Good. So, are there any questions?
Thank you for asking for questions, which was my job, I thought, but works this way as well. Are there any questions? And I also heard that they are looking for suggestions for future features.
Sure.
So this is your chance. Okay, nothing. Everyone is freezing, I think, because suddenly it starts to be a bit fresher.
I'm Canadian, I'm fine.
I'm fine as well, as a Dutch. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for coming out, and thank you for enjoying GeoServer.
Okay, welcome back. We are quickly, we lost a few minutes for technical reasons because there might be rain on the equipment, which is not a good idea. Let's move on with the State of GeoNode by Giovanni. Yeah, please start.
Hey, okay. Hello. Okay, so State of GeoNode. Well, I don't know if many of you GeoNode, so I will give you a quick preview of what it is in case you don't know, but it will be focused on what are the news of the recent new version that we released a few weeks ago. So we are GeoSolutions. We are core committers and maintainers of GeoNode, GeoServer, and MapStore. And we provide support services on these technologies. Okay, so what's GeoNode? Well, GeoNode is two things, let's say. From one side, it's a product, a web platform for building spatial data infrastructures and geospatial data catalogs. So it's a product that you can install and start building your catalog of data and presentations and dissemination of these data in forms of maps, dashboards, and so on. At the same time, GeoNode is a framework for building spatial data infrastructures. So it can be used as a product with its client framework and all its backend services, or you can use it, split it in its own services, and build your own applications, bespoke application on top of it. And this is by design. So, and this is more and more like this. I mean, in the recent versions, we spent a lot of time designing these capabilities. So, you can create thematic maps, dashboards, geostories, and expose all this data and its metadata, because it's also a metadata catalog with ISO compliant metadata, Dublin core metadata, and expose them through its own APIs and through standard OGC services like CSW for metadata, WMS, WFS, WCS, and so on. So you bring in everything, you build even simple dataset catalogs or more complex visualization on top of them, and then distribute these visualizations and services. So basically, you take your local files, spatial files, documents like media files, PDF, and you can also integrate remote services like existing WMS services, ArcGIS, REST services, and so on, and create your catalog as data sets and documents. These are the two kind of resources. And then from these resources, you build maps, geostories, dashboards, or what we say GeoApps. GeoApps is an abstract model in GeoNode for building and implementing your own kind of applications supported with the same services that support the other applications. So all the permission systems, metadata systems, and so on. And in the end, you get out of your GeoNode with OGC services, REST APIs, or HTML viewers and embedded viewers that you can embed in your website, external pages, and so on. So GeoNode is a composition of services. The core application is a Python application built in with Django framework and other things. And it uses GeoServer, PostgreSQL, PostGIS, and PyCSW as external services, and more others. When you deploy an entire GeoNode stack, we also include Memcache, RabbitMQ for their synchronous systems, and so on. So it's quite a complex stack. But basically, yeah, the web platform, the core where the application is built is this one, but then the services are directly also available from GeoServer and PyCSW. So it's an open source project. We as GeoSolutions are the main maintainers now, committers, but we have also contributions from, for example, the TUNEN Institute and the other developers. There's the community, we have a steering committee, and so the community is quite active and more active. There has been a cold time in the past years, but now we are bringing it on again, and I'm really happy for that. And this is an opportunity for FOSS4G to meet each other. Now we are at version 4.1.0. It was released a few weeks ago. The first version of GeoNode 4, which was a big refactoring of GeoNode, where we completely rewrote some services, the REST API, and the front-end application. It was done in August, so it was for the FOSS4G past year in Florence. We presented the new version. Now we are 4.1.0, and this presentation is focused on what we did in this year. Okay. You can play with the demo instances. They are open. You can register, create your accounts, and test all the features, except the administration features, of course. And we have a development version, which is following the master branch of and a stable version, which is one-to-one with the stable release. So feel free to go online and test it. So GeoNode 4.1.0. First thing, we completely rewrote the importer, which is the service behind the upload system and the harvesting system. It was completely rewritten because the previous version was using was a mix of a GeoNode part and the GeoNode importer extension, which was quite complex to be kept synchronized because there were two asynchronous systems. And also we had a dependency on GeoServer extensions that didn't allow to easily customize something or extend it. So, and moreover, we wanted the data, for vector data in particular, that we brought into GeoNode to be more under control of GeoNode rather than GeoServer. So the previous versions, you gave the data, let's say, to GeoServer, and GeoServer made everything, imported, create the DB tables, and do everything. Now, things have reversed. Now, GeoNode takes control of the import procedure with its own asynchronous service. And so it does the ingestion into the DB table, make processing, pre-processing, optimizations, validation, and so on. So everything is done in the GeoNode code. And in the end, it tells GeoServer that this layer exists and creates all what is needed in GeoServer for the cartographic services. And we have a new orchestrator of this complex flow that takes control of it in a transactional way of all the things. So we have full control in case of errors or whatever. We are able to roll back and to avoid any inconsistency or partial uploads. Another goal of the new importer was to make it pluggable and customizable. So now we have pluggable system. Every format has its own module. And you can integrate your own modules or replace the core modules with your own so that you can implement your own upload service. I mean, on top of the upload, well, the upload service is one, but you can implement your own logic specific for one or more formats if you have custom formats. An example comes from the TUNEN Institute, which wanted to use the tabular data JSON specification for the import of CSV files. And they just created a tiny module in Python. And yeah, without touching the core, now they have this new format for them, and they will release it. Now we have also multi-layer formats that wasn't available before. So now we are able to also upload geopackages containing multiple vector layers, for the moment only vectors. But we also have, not released yet, but we have an example of an OSM PBF upload. So you can upload just the PBF with all the nodes and the edges from OpenStreetMap, and we can create all the, split the layers according to the tagging in OSM. So now you have a very open-ended way to create your import system, which also applies to the harvesting, because the upload is where you upload through the API or the UI, the physical file, you push it, but the same core system works for the harvesting, where a service which can be scheduled will pull data itself from sources, from external sources, and do the publishing on the reverse. So yeah, these are the new modules available in the UI. The new upload system uses the OGR, GDAL OGR, both through the Python OGR API, the OGR to OGR command line, and other services. But basically this means that we have full support from GDAL and OGR. So potentially you can have any format supported by GDAL in GeoNode. Okay, another topic is the new filters in the filters panel. We didn't port the Thesaurus filters from GeoNode 3. This was GeoNode 3. It was requested by several customers that use Thesaurus a lot. Thesaurus is an important concept in metadata, in Inspire metadata in particular, to define well-defined concepts to be attached to your resources. And so now we have brought Thesaurus back in GeoNode, and you are able to make faceted filtering on the keywords for each Thesaurus. Thesaurus can be uploaded through the Django administration, so you can take RDF files, which is a standard format to define Thesaurus. You just upload the file through the Django admin, which is a back office for GeoNode, and those Thesaurus will be exploded into the keywords and so on, and they are available to be used inside the metadata system. Now we also have brought back date filters, so we have expanded the filters in GeoNode a lot. We are going to make other improvements to the filtering system, both to this, also to the spatial filter that is already there, but I mean can be improved. But another important thing that we are working onto is improving the performance of filters, because they are a bit weak when we have very large numbers of resources, owners, categories, and so on. At the moment, it's not very well optimized. The implementation was a bit naive, let's say, in some parts. So we are restructuring it right these days. So the next version, which will arrive sooner than the current one, version 4.2.0, will be dedicated mostly to the optimization of filters, all the filters, and also introducing proper faceting. Because at the moment, the filter system in GeoNode is a bit different from what we usually have from faceting filters. It works, let's say, in OR. So when you select a category and you select a region, let's say, it will ask for all the resources that are either in the region or has a category, which often brings to wrong matches, so empty results. Usually we work in AND filtering, like Secan does, CJ Network, the others. So when you click a filters, all the filters will be updated. The counts also will be updated to only make available resources and other filters values that are compatible with the filter that you set before. So it's working in end. And this is quite a big work, reworking of the filtering system, but yeah, we are almost there. Another big change was time series. The new upload system doesn't have the steps, the optional steps that were available before in previous versions, where during the upload, the user were suggested to make additional optional steps to configure the CRS, to configure the time series and other parts. But the way it was implemented was confusing for users. So they were stuck. They didn't understand very well what they should have done. And so we decided for several reasons to drop these steps during the upload, just complete the upload, make it very straightforward and linear, and give the option afterward to configure additional settings for the layers. So now the date time can be configured inside the metadata settings. So you flag if it has a time attribute, you select which is the time, date time field, and then you will get the features for time series like the time slider widgets and so on. Of course, one thing that we require is that you use formats that support date time natively in the field. So we are not extrapolating or parsing dates from strings, let's say. So a shapefile that has a date field will be recognized and imported as a date field. If it's a string with a date, it will be imported as a string, and you will not have the option to select that field as the date for the time series. So I'm saying this because it happened that some users asked why it didn't work. Then link the resources. Now we have a way to visualize links between maps, datasets, and documents. A dataset can be used as a layer in multiple maps. A map can use multiple datasets. A document can link to multiple layers or to multiple maps. Okay, so these relationships were still available in Genode 4, but there was no way to see them. So now we brought them back. And now you have a new tab in the panel, the information panel, with the link resources, with the list. For example, here is the map and the list of layers connected to the map. And the reverse is also true. If you go to the layer, you will see the maps. This is only valid for maps, documents, and dataset, but we are extending the model to make it available for any kind of resource in Genode, so also dashboards and geostories. So to make the relationship, the links, a foundation model of Genode, also in terms of fair principles. Okay. Yeah. So dataset that links to. This is the map with all the datasets. For documents, you can create links explicitly. Between datasets and maps, it's implicit because when you create a map, you put a dataset, so it's implicit, the relationship. But for documents, you need to make it explicit. And in the document metadata, you have the option to use the link to select multiple datasets or maps to link this document to. This is useful, for example, for metadata or additional documentation that you want to attach to a dataset or a map. So a PDF, or explaining the lineage or the history or how the dataset was processed. This way you can connect it to the dataset. And from the dataset view, you will see all the documents that are connected, so you can have additional information directly from the dataset. Yeah, this is what I was saying before. This linkage is important both for FAIR principles, because it's a really important model that we want to extend, and we are working on it. It's not yet, I don't think it will be available in version 4.2.0 maybe, but maybe an initial refactoring will be there. And it's also important for the control of the life cycle of resources, because now, for example, if you have a data set or a map that you are using inside the dashboard, inside the GeoStories, this relationship is not being used, for example, to enforce control when you want to delete or replace a resource. So you might end up with a visualization that is broken because you have changed or removed a linked data set. Okay, so REST API is improving. We are extending it. We are changing, well, we're maintaining back compatibility, but we are finding better ways to make it more usable, more powerful. We are almost, we have covered almost all the functionality that we have in Genode can be managed through the API. So this is the goal. Make Genode even usable as a headless service. So you can implement your management system, your client, even without the integrated client application based on MapStore. The goal is that you can use Genode and then build your own application. I did it several times. We did it. And a few days ago, I did a test with Flutter. You know Flutter, the framework for mobile application. And I did an example for a customer where I built in a couple of hours, I built a complete application completely based on Genode REST APIs. I was able to search data sets, visualize them, query them, and so on. So I think it's powerful enough now to be used as a backend service only. You can also, and we will extend it, the ability to integrate your own metadata and your own models to extend the API with your custom modules. So if you have your custom module, or you want to extend the information attached to the resources, you can do it without having to implement yourself the API. There are some fields in the model that are, blobs storage, where you can put your JSON or YAML information, whatever, and you can put it there and get it out and do whatever you want. We don't care. Okay, it's a blob, opaque field. And now we can also, through the API, create remote documents, meaning that you can create a catalog of documents that reference external documents instead of having to upload documents to the catalog. This is also true for datasets. You can use remote services. So in theory, you can have now a GeoNode catalog containing only remote resources. So not data that you upload to GeoNode, but just as a catalog of your services, wherever they are, okay? Other websites. And so we upgraded the reference version of GeoServer to GeoServer 2.23.0, and it works very well. We also make some fixes to the backup and restore system in GeoServer to make it more robust and integrated with GeoNode. So now the backup and the restore, I didn't mention here, but it was a big work that we did also to make it more robust and updated. So now you have a full backup and full restore system for a complete GeoNode stack of services, where, for example, we use it to synchronize the staging and production environments. It's very straightforward to use. It's just a command, backup, restore. And also, the new version of GeoServer has granular control over WPS processes. So we have geofence rules to control specific aspects of each process, or each WPS process. And this is very important, for example, for direct download services provided by the WPS export service in GeoServer, because now we have control. The permissions to use this WPS export system is aligned to the permissions that you set in GeoNode for users. Okay, we also upgraded MapStore. I'm ending the time, but I'm in time. A big upgrade of MapStore. We are still late, although MapStore is our own framework we use also in other products. The integration in GeoNode is taking more time because there are different models. The path is probably to integrate and merge the two more in the future. For sure, in a few weeks, we will make the big jump to the current version of MapStore so that we align the versions and we are then able to bring in new features that are already available in MapStore, like 3D ties, cesium support, because we will have 3D support in GeoNode 2. So the ability to upload or ingest 3D data formats and visualize them inside its client. Well, I won't say the application context manager is another topic, okay. The future, well, quickly. Yeah, I already said improve extended faceting and filtering, more configurability because it's a real a point for us to make everything the more customizable and more configurable as possible, extendable, because it's also important for us. I mean, every customer has its own needs. So instead of doing the old way to make a big thing that can be configured and adapted to all the cases, we are trying to make it more modular so that you can easily plug or unplug things. So this is the route. With the custom layouts also in terms of the viewer, the client application. We will see, I have a presentation with a lot of cases where we have customizations and how it works tomorrow. Custom download providers, this is important. This will come soon, where you can implement your own download provider. At the moment, we download the data that we own, but we will have the way to plug your own download provider. So the way you can implement your logic to provide the downloads. This is really important for huge data sets or for remote data sets that are stored in remote storages, for example. So this was implemented for a customer that had the data set stored in an AWS S3 bucket, and we need to make it private, so under the same permission system as GeoNode. So in that case, we use pre-signed URLs from AWS with volatile URLs that will last a few minutes and so on. So we designed a component to do that, and so we took the opportunity to make it a module that could be plugged, and so now you can plug your own module and define your own logic for the downloads. We are extending also the integration with the OEDC social account. So OpenID Connect, OAuth 2, it's already there. We have a lot of experience of using Keycloak, Azure ID, Auth0, whatever, LDAP. But now we extended it to make it easier to also not only authenticate users, but also to parse claims and roles and to map them to roles and groups in GeoNode. So we take more information from the JWT token and the authentication provider to configure these accounts in GeoNode. So yeah, this is my, of course, we invite everyone that has GeoNode, particularly GeoNode 3, to make an upgrade. We have done at least 12 upgrades this year from GeoNode 3 to GeoNode 4. It's not a big problem, depending on your system, but we were able to bring everyone to GeoNode 4 and port all the customizations and without losing anything. So, of course, GeoNode 3 is out end of life, so we don't provide support on GeoNode 3 anymore. In case you need specific support, of course, we have support contracts for that, but as a community project, GeoNode 3 is end of life, okay? And that's all. I think you have questions.
Thank you, Giovanni. Are there any questions? Is anyone using GeoNode already here? Ah, that's good to see. Yeah.
Thank you. Earlier there was a presentation about Geo network and how they're moving from metadata catalog only to a data platform with data visualization and so on. It looks like there will be some overlap with GeoNode. What's your opinion about this?
Well, there's some overlap, of course, between GeoNetwork and metadata service in GeoNode, of course, because GeoNode uses the PyCSW, which is a lightweight engine for metadata. It doesn't provide all the services that GeoNetwork is able to provide. So in the past, we had an integration between GeoNode and GeoNetwork that was dropped because it wasn't maintained. We are going to improve, well, there are plans to improve the search services in GeoNode to make it more powerful, but of course, well, you don't have all the means to create application schema, complex schemas that you have in GeoNetwork. You can do that also in PyCSW, but you have to do it more manual work than development work. So there's overlap, of course. There are two engines for metadata services. The metadata system in GeoNode is important, but this is not the principal feature in GeoNode, okay? It's enough what we have for the moment. Maybe for more advanced system services, we were able to support a custom schema, Inspire schema. For example, in Italy we have our NDT, which is a schema for Inspire. And we were able to extend the schema in GeoNode and also the editor with all the validation rules and so on. Well, Italian institutions, official Italian institutions that are data providers for Europe, they were happy with that. It was enough. So it depends on your needs, of course, but I think we cover quite 90% of cases.
Thank you.
I think we have to finish this session. Before we all freeze, there's a coffee break right now, so if you have any more questions for Giovanni, he will be around. So I suggest going to the venue building and get a hot coffee or tea, and maybe get a sweater in your room if you're staying here in the place. Thank you.